Hello and welcome everyone. Hola, bienvenidos. My name is Nicole Fuentes. I am founder and director at Bienestar.
Soy la fundadora de Bienestar.
Thank you for joining us for the good life, will to live, and the power to create it. I will go over a few items as we get people signed in. Right now, attendees are currently on mute. This webinar will be recorded and the video will be sent to you, attendees, for review after the webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat area of the Zoom control panel. I will give them to our speakers after a short talk from each of our presenters. And we will have time to have a non-recorded Q&A session at the end of the presentation. I also would like to let you know that there is simultaneous translation available to Spanish and vice versa to English. So if you need it, please click on the world icon at the bottom of your screen. It says interpretation, and there you can choose the language. Arlen Solokin, Vivian Hyton, and Paul Hector will each speak for about 3 to 5 minutes to begin the session. And before that, I would like to tell you a little bit about each of our speakers, our amazing speakers this morning. Arlen Solokin is CEO of Instituto de Bienestar Integral, Institute of Wellbeing, an organization based in Mexico that offers positive psychology programs for people and organizations around the world. Arlen also serves as an instructor in the Happiness Studies Academy and as a professor of practice in the Master in Happiness Studies at Centenary University. She works with several universities and organizations in leadership, social responsibility, and positive psychology curriculum development and professional training. Arlen holds a master's degree in applied positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, a master's degree in social work from the University of St. Thomas, and she is also an international speaker. Hi, Arlen. Vivian Hyton works in the fields of strategy and business development. She was at the Forbes America's top companies, where she was responsible for national sales and international medical meetings. In addition, she was in charge of strategic initiatives at one of the oldest foundations in the United States, solely dedicated to the science advancement. Vivian received her executive MBA from Eller College of Management at the University of Arizona, where she was awarded for her efforts in community leadership. Vivian focuses on what is meaningful in healthcare and will share her own health journey. Using skills in strategy and prioritization, she works with individuals and organizations to define and pursue what matters most. Welcome, Vivian.
Thank you, Nicole.
And Paul Hector has extensive experience in the international knowledge-based development sector. Over the past decades, he has worked for the United Nations, advising governments and institutions on initiatives and actions aimed at overcoming knowledge and digital divides. Paul is a self-confessed bookworm and holds multiple master's and doctoral degrees. His research interests include knowledge-based development, design, entrepreneurship, innovation, and digital transformation. Paul has received various awards and is an alumnus of the J. William Fulbright Fellowship and the U.S. State Department's International Visitor Leadership Programs. Beyond his professional pursuits, Paul is also a coach, mentor, and author. He has mentored students at the University of Washington and the University of the West Indies, and he has supported colleagues in finding balance. In his recently published book, Yes, You Can, 5 Steps to Becoming the CEO of Your Life, Paul shares his learnings and experiences to help readers find success on their own terms. Welcome, Paul. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Nicole. It's a pleasure to be here.
So as we mentioned, we will hear from each one of them for a few minutes, and then take the rest of our time together to answer any questions or comment on reflections that you may have on the good life, the will to live, and the power to create it. We hope that by the end of this webinar, you will be more comfortable and confident about creating wonderful lives for yourselves. We are very passionate about well-being and have great stories and education to share with you. Our goal is to help you start on your journey to a happier and healthier life. So welcome to our wonderful speakers. Welcome to all attendings this morning. Arlen will be our first speaker this morning, and she will be speaking on the good life. Arlen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you very much. I am so happy to be here, sharing about my passion and my work. But first, I would like to share that Vivian, Paul, Nicole, and I are here to talk about the good life, not because we have the perfect life, but because we have made amends with the fact that it is okay to have some chaos in the background. So this is how our chaos looks like. And this is where we're coming from today. So basically, one of the first steps to begin talking about the good life is to really acknowledge and accept the chaos that that is in our daily lives. We need to embrace the good, and we need to embrace the challenges that we face. And there's always something going in the background. No life is perfect. So the good life embraces both challenges and aspirations. And the first step to begin talking about the good life, it's really to understand what it entails, how complex it is. And this is why this topic has been, debated for, hundreds and hundreds of years. This question about the good life has been discussed by many great philosophers throughout history. And Epicurus, for example, believed that the good life is a life of pleasure and the absence of pain. But he didn't mean that we needed to live a life of indulging in fleeting pleasures. He believed really that we should cultivate lasting sources of pleasure, such as friendship, such as intellectual pursuit, and also a life of tranquility and independence. Aristotle, on the other hand, for example, believed that the good life is one of virtue, where we practice moral excellence in all aspects of our lives. And Socrates believed in the importance of self-knowledge, and he said, an unexamined life, it's not a life worth living. So he invited his students to reflect on their values, beliefs, actions, in order to live an authentic and congruent life. Modern psychologists, on the other side, like Dr. Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, or Tal Ben-Shahar, who is called like the father of the science of happiness, highlight the importance of cultivating positive emotions, meaningful relationships, a sense of purpose and meaning, a curious mind, and the importance of self-care. So I would like to invite you, as we begin in this journey today, this morning, to think about what is the good life for you. And I would like to invite you to reflect on this for a moment. What are the ingredients that make your life worth living? Is it pleasure, friendship, freedom, virtue, self-knowledge? Is it positive emotions? What would be your top 3 priorities if somebody asks you how do you build the good life? And out of these reflections, I would like to invite you to think about our world today. And in his book, Factfulness, Rosling writes that the world is much better than it was some decades ago, with advancements in health, education, and technology worldwide. This argument has also been the case by Peter Diamandis in his book, Abundance. So many scholars are really pointing out to the fact that the world today is much better than it was many years ago in many, many different areas. And nonetheless, in the news, we hear once and once again very bad news that, of course, get deeply into our hearts and our minds. But the advancements are correct and they are true, but despite of this advancement, depression, anxiety, and loneliness have been on the rise. So what does this tell us about the good life? Does the good life depend on external or internal circumstances? We have other psychologists like Isaac Piletelsky, leader of the field of positive psychology and social psychology. He talks about the importance of contribution and mattering, of feeling valued and adding value also to the world, which is one of the core fundamental needs of human beings. And it relates to focusing also on the outer world and not only on our internal world. And he says there is no wellness without fairness. So it's important to cultivate a broader view of the world outside of us as well as inside. So on the one hand, we are living some of the most exciting times of all, where individuals have more power to change the world than at any other moment of history. With just one click, the whole world might know what we're doing, what we're thinking, and even what we are eating. But on the other hand, human beings are also encountering a great challenge, that of insignificance. And Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote the book Sapiens, writes about insignificance in the context of how artificial intelligence have an impact in productivity, in productivity chain, and the job losses that they represent, that also highlight how individuals are losing power amidst all of the new technologies that we're facing. But I would have to add that this sense of insignificance might come as well because there is an overlying feeling of lack of belonging and isolation. And that contributes a lot to those high levels of depression and anxiety. So when we're thinking about the good life, I would like to encourage you to create your own recipe, to think about the philosophers and psychologists of all times, but to also expand your vision from the self to the community at large. Perhaps this is the antidote we are looking for to really feel engaged and connected to our life today. So as we explore the meaning of the good life, we need to remember that the journey is unique to each of us. It's not about achieving a specific destination, but about finding fulfillment and happiness in the moment. Oprah Winfrey believes the good life is about living your best, most authentic self. She says the biggest adventure you can ever take is to live the life of your dreams. So Oprah, for example, made her mission to inspire people to live the life they want, to make every day count, to feel value, and to add value to others. So again, what does the good life means to you? What brings you joy, purpose, and fulfillment? I invite you to embrace these insights and strive to live the best life possible, one moment at a time. And I am very excited to have Vivian here with us because she will share her life journey. And she's a living example of the process I just shared with you this morning. So please, Vivian.
Thank you, Arlen.
The conversation.
Thank you, Arlen. I really appreciate it. And hello, everyone. We have some new faces and some familiar ones. It's wonderful to be here this morning. So as Arlene mentioned, we all have a little bit of chaos, sometimes more than others at different times in our lives. And so my background, as Nicole mentioned, is in strategy. And while, life works pretty well, we all know that we're not going to get out of this alive. And so I will tell you my own story about using strategy and how I saved my own life. And it was literally my will to live. So in 2017, I found out that I almost died, twice, actually. And so I used all my strategy knowledge to get doctors in place. I was a compliant patient. I had my task list, but I wasn't completely living. And this was due to a lot of overwork, deaths that happened in the family, and things that happen in our everyday lives, that can cause our emotional and physical resiliency to grow thin. And so what I did is, like any strategist might do, is try and tie it all up in a bow. And I decided I was going to plan my memorial service. And I found that I could not. And the reason was my will to live. So I changed my perspective, and I looked at research a little differently. And what I found, I'd like to share with you, and we can do a little bit more in the Q&A. So basically, I took a look at a lot of the research on recovery and found two in particular that were very similar. One was at the Ochsner Collaborative, and that is a group of different healthcare institutions. I found it through the University of California, San Francisco, but some of their collaborations are with Harvard Medical Center, which some of you may be familiar with, the University of Washington, and then other very reputable institutions. And the other was closer to home, here in Arizona, the University of Arizona. And while they had differing patients with differing diagnoses, and it was also different from my own, there were common components. So I'm going to share them. The first was really connection and having some group that we can belong to, that can support and encourage one another. The Blue Zones group, which we can include in the chat, talks about something called the MOI. And that is the idea of having 4 to 5 people that connect and create this bond throughout their lives. And then the second piece is having a mental health expert. For me, that was for healthcare trauma. And I see mental health as kind of like physical therapy. Physical therapy, you would go for something like a torn shoulder to get it supported and rehabilitated. And so I see mental health in the same way. We would go and get that help. The third thing is meditation. And there are plenty of studies on meditation. I did the mind-body stress reduction program. And then the fourth, and I think what is most important, is having a sense of meaning. This Viktor Frankl wrote about this, and meaning is a way of building in more resiliency and adaptation. And so I really changed my perspective on this idea of chaos, right? And this fear. I accepted the fear, but things kept happening. And 6 months later, this happened again, despite all the strategy. But what really was effective was incorporating these 4 areas of building my support system with my friends, having that connection, not only just receiving, but giving as well, making sure that I got the right sort of support, relaxing and calming my body through meditation, and then creating this sense of meaning. So what did I do? I mean, there are a lot of things we can do to create meaning, right? And I encourage you all to maybe think of 1 or 2 actions that you can take that would increase meaning in your life. Don't put it off as something you will do tomorrow, because we don't know how much time we have. And for me, that was adopting a puppy. By saving another life, I think I saved my own, because I have been clear now for 7 years, thank goodness. But in looking at the chaos, you know, in changing that perspective, I realized that something like an NPR science writer, Lulu Miller, has written, it's this force in life that allows for growth. And it creates shooting stars and rainbows, and it thinks of things that we would never dream of. So this chaos and surprises in our lives can be both difficult, but they can also allow for a positive bent. So now I work with organizations to look at the soul-fulfilling, purposeful, creative parts of our lives. What's the most meaningful parts of our lives? I think that is one of the big secrets, right, to the good life. And so hopefully you will be able to think of 1 or 2 things that you can do to create it. And if not, of course, we have Paul. Hi, Paul, here, who can talk a little bit more about the power to create a good life.
Thank you, Vivian. And that was really, really awesome. And I think it really gives a lot of perspective on the world that we live in today. You know, if we look around, we see a world which is characterized by volatility, you know, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. The so-called VUCA world. And often it's just natural for us to want to be in control of things, but it's simply, you know, not possible. And if we think about what happened during the pandemic, you know, at first we tried really hard to get rid of the virus, you know, do everything in our power. But then at some point we recognize that, you know, we just have to coexist with it. And how do we find that balance? Viv talked about mental health. How do we understand what are the things that we can control and, you know, work with them? And then, of course, having that sort of acceptance over those aspects which, you know, are beyond us. And how do we come to terms with this? And, you know, when we look around, you know, there's so much uncertainty. We have advances happening in new technologies. I talked just a bit ago about the pandemic. We see wars, we see new cultural trends, we see new policies, and these happen in one place, and very often they can have, you know, unforeseen consequences in other parts of the world. And what makes it really challenging is that it's really difficult to anticipate or prepare for these shocks. Sometimes we're not even able to distinguish what is the cause and what was the effect. And there's a lot of information, and there's often multiple ways to interpret this information about a particular situation. And today we live in a world where, unfortunately, there's so much disinformation, the so-called fake news. And this makes it difficult for us to even confirm the accuracy of the information that we receive. And talking about information, you know, when you look at what's happening around us, think about social media. In just 1 minute in 2023, you can have 21,000 interactions taking place on LinkedIn. If we look at Instagram, we can see in a typical minute, 66,000 photos are being shared. On Twitter, you know, almost 600,000 tweets sent just in a minute. So lots of information. How do we make sense of this? And often this gives us a feeling of, you know, drowning, a sense of, you know, overwhelm. At the same time, we know so much more, but what is it that we're paying attention to? As Arlen mentioned earlier on, there is objective data that indicates that the world is actually getting better. You know, for example, there's so many statistics by the World Bank, by the United Nations, which indicate that poverty is actually declining. We see less maternal and infant mortality. And today we no longer hear about as many people dying from things like measles and polios. Many governments have health care, you have support for students, for startups, but yet there's a lot of pessimism about the future. We ask ourselves, why is that? And there are multiple reasons, but one of the things is that it's sometimes hard for us to see progress. We don't have the sort of perspective of being able to see, how did my parents, live? How did my grandparents live? And how have things changed over these 2, 3 generations? There's also another challenge. Again, because we have so much social media, we often compare ourselves to people who are very different and also very much better off. So we look at, for example, the type of car we're driving, and we look at the car that, let's say, Elon Musk is driving, and we say, oh, I'm not doing so well. I mean, is this really a realistic comparison? And if we think about the media does a lot of reporting on events, especially negative events, but there's not so much reporting about longer term trends. And of course, the work of the media of keeping the public informed is, of course, very important. But analysis, investigative journalism requires a lot of effort and investment. And what we find is that the business models that support journalism and their very important work is under threat. So we actually see there is less of the sort of investigative documentary journalism and the type of reflection which encourages public debate about all of what's happening, what it means, and being able to see the positive trends. And of course, negative events also seem to be more easily remembered. And we heard about Yahiri before. Again, a lot of his work talks about, the importance of remembering negative events for survival. So really, what can we do? How can we create this good life so we can actually thrive in this VUCA world that we've just talked about? And the good news is that there are solutions out there. We just need to approach them. Mindfulness we've heard about, and Michelle Bennett, she suggests a 3-pronged strategy that includes developing resilience to better handle our emotions and the confusions that arise when we face uncertain, high-stakes situations. It's also important for us to reframe the way in which we look at situations. What are the opportunities that actually exist in these situations? How can we actively learn and expand our skills for handling these new situations? And one of the things we heard just now about the importance of community. Very often, if we can get the advice of others, the perspective of others, if we can share with them what the challenges we're facing, what we want to do, then we can have a sort of a collective solidarity which allows us to face challenges, whether it's at the level of an institution, within your community, in a family, or in a couple. And having that new outlook that provides a sort of sense of collective effort and resilience. And it's important to understand that these are very much soft skills, skills which are very important, but unfortunately are not often taught. So I think there's a great need, even greater need today, for the work that Arlen, Viv, myself, and other institutions are doing. So what's clear is that if we have clarity and a sense of purpose, we can really look out and, in a way, move forward in the face of challenges and chaos. So how do we go about finding, this purpose? And I think we can turn to Japan. There they have the concept of ikigai, and it's a concept that roughly translates to what is it that gives our life meaning and purpose? And it looks at 4 areas of our life. First of all, it asks, what are the things that you love? Who are the people? Who are the causes that bring you joy? All which, if you had to give them up, would create a sense of pain. A second area it looks at, what are the things that you are good at? So what are the things that you can do with little effort compared to others? Thirdly, what are the profitable skills that you have? What are the skills and talents that you have that allow you to earn a living? And finally, what are the things that the world needs that you can actually provide? So in your community, What are the services, ideas, or needs that you can provide and where you can help other persons? Now, what's important about this is that Ikigai considers you not just as an individual, but it also thinks about you in that wider context of your contribution to others and to your community. And this is very important because in our fast-paced, hyperactive, me-focused world, I think this concept of Ikigai reminds us very importantly that no person, no man, no woman is an island in themselves. We're actually part of a bigger whole, and our contribution to our community is really vital for helping us to be complete. In short, we are interdependent, not independent beings. Now, to use Ikigai, we have to change the way in which we normally operate. Instead of being so fast-paced, we need to sort of stop, take some time, and reflect, and ask ourselves, what are the things that energize me? Yes, we have to look inwards. And we have to ask ourselves, are we spending our time in ways that really align with our values? Are we just people sitting on the couch, thinking about what would be great, thinking about how wonderful those causes are that we would like to be committed to, or are we actually getting up and going out and working on those ideas? And one of the things which is important, as Viv said earlier, is that life is not waiting for you, and you need to start where you are right now. You don't have to figure everything out. You don't need a perfect plan. Start where you are. What is that first step that you need to take? Go ahead, make that step, and things will get clearer as you go along. So as I said, what are the things that you love? What are the things that you're good at? What profitable skills do you have? What is it that the world needs that you, and perhaps only you can provide? So think about that, take action. That's the only way to make changes. Start with you. Yep. So back over to Nicole.
Well, thank you so much, Arlene, Vivian, and Paul, for your wonderful, insightful, and inspiring contributions. There's so much to talk about and so much that we could reflect on for hours. But let's hear from our participants. I'm sure they have some comments or questions. So we will go ahead now and take some time for questions now. There's two ways you can ask a question. One is through the chat, and the other one is by raising your hand, and we will open your mic. Well, I'll wait a little bit for the questions from our participants to arrive, but I do have a few questions that I would like to ask you. Arlene, I love your presentation. I'm thinking about this divergence between the objective life and the subjective life, and how one is getting better and the other one is not so much getting better. And I'm thinking about in terms of the workplace, because we spend so much time at the workplace. In terms of leadership, what would you say are some of the main elements that contribute to the good life or to well-being at the workplace?
Thank you, Nicole. And I think this is a very interesting question, because we oftentimes feel that leaders need something very different than common men and women around. And there are many important aspects that we can mention. One of them has to do with like Paul finished talking about the importance of self-reflection and giving ourselves time to understand what we really need. So I think one of the main important elements is to really give ourselves the time that we need to actually understand ourselves a little better, and to really think about what do we need, and the importance of touching our vulnerability. I think especially in the workplace, there is a tendency to think that showing yourself as a vulnerable leader shows weakness, and it shows that you don't know something, but nobody knows everything. So it is very important to acknowledge really that our own vulnerabilities, and create and develop our ability to ask for help, to share with your team, and to ask for some feedback whenever you feel like it. I like very much the work of Jane Dutton, and she talks a lot about the importance of human connection and creating a safe space to build within organizations where we can actually rely on each other. So building trust within, and building trust with your team, it's very important. One of the most important characteristics in the workplace to cultivate well-being has to do also with psychological safety, with understanding that we can ask for help, take risks, even share the places where we have made some mistakes, so that we are able to take care of those mistakes early on instead of waiting until they get much larger. So we need to be proactive. And I think there are like 3 important characteristics that are related not only to leadership but also to human progress. One of them is cultivating an optimistic mindset, and this has to do with our possibility of understanding that, yes, as Paul said, we are living in a VUCA world, where volatility and uncertainty are present. But are we able to think about a slightly positive future, a slightly better future, that drives and motivates us and keeps us going? Because whenever we feel we are drowning in depression or pessimism, we stop trying to make an effort. So building an optimistic mindset. The other is imagining different futures. Like, are we able to create in our own ways of being, and tap into alternative ways in which our work, our life can be built? So it is important to think about pathways. How am I able to build these futures that I am imagining? And that is very closely related to optimism, because you're thinking about a brighter future, and then you're thinking about all the possible ways in which you could try several things. And in a world that is changing so fast, it is very important for us to actually say, to have different avenues that we could walk through, to make those goals come true. And the third important aspect is self-efficacy, believing that I can do what it takes to get me out of this situation, or to get me to the place I want to get to. And Vivian highlighted this in her conversation before, because she was saying how she needed to feel that she had the support she needed, and that she was also able to make amends with what was happening in her life, and also with the choices she needed to make in order to create what she needed to survive. So these 3 elements, optimism, imagination, and self-efficacy, are key for everyone, but strategically, I think it's key for leaders in organizations.
Thank you, Arlen, for your very comprehensive answer. And what I hear all of you saying, the word action is very important. It's not enough to know things. It is important to actually be very intentional and get involved in creating our own personal life. Thank you. Our participant, Carlos, you're welcome to jump in.
Gracias. Gracias en español.
Thank you. I'm going to speak Spanish. I was late to this conference because I had some trouble, but I'm trying to understand what you're talking about. I work with self-knowledge as a crucial aspect of what we're talking about and all the other conferences I've been attending with the Institute. So my question is, establishing a relationship between self-knowledge as a crucial aspect, which is rooted from our self-efficacy. Everything is derived from self-knowledge. Do you agree that this factor, this aspect, self-knowledge, is the most important to be happier, to be more productive, etc.? Yes, thank you.
Who would like to answer?
Could you hear the question, Vivian and Paul?
I don't have
Yes.
the I don't have the translation on, but if we have a short translation in English.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Do you want to translate it, Nicole, or should I?
Go ahead, Arlen.
Okay, so yes, so Carlos works on the self-development arena, and he's saying that we have talked about the importance of cultivating a positive outlook in life, an optimistic outlook, of being able to manage our own resources, of spending time for self-evaluation. So what he's saying is that if we all agree that knowing ourselves is like the most important part in order to create a good life. I hope I was good enough to Carlos to translate your your question. So yes, Paul, and I have also something to share, but after you.
Okay. So great. Well,
I
thank
will
you.
too.
Thank you, Carlos. That's really a great question. I talked about the fact that we live in this very complex world. Many things happening in many places, influencing things in ways that we often don't quite understand. And very often it's very easy to take comfort in the idea that there might be some sort of silver bullet, some magical thing which will, you know, fix everything. And unfortunately, it's a little more complex than that. So yes, self-efficacy that you talked about, understanding yourself. You know, what are the things that motivate you? What are the things? What are your limitations? These, of course, is very important aspects of it. But then this needs to be complemented with other things. So, for example, yes, I might understand myself. I know what the things are that that motivate me. But what efforts do I take? What actions am I taking? Am I trying to surround myself with persons who are also moving in that direction, so that I can also maybe have a bigger pool of ideas, also a bigger support network to help me implement those things. So as I said, you know, so yes, it's important to know yourself, because by knowing your strengths and also your limitations, you can also understand where are the things that I need to work on, and so you can move towards a direction. But it's not just one thing; it's several things that you need. I'm sure Arlen, Viv, and Nicole will also, you know, add other perspectives. Thank you, Carlos.
Are you going to go next, Arlen, or should I? I'm going to go. Okay, I will make it short. Thank you, Carlos. That was as Paul mentioned, that's a very good question. I think yes, I think self-awareness does help us develop some of the ways in which we can create this positive outcome. But obviously we have to develop that, right? And how do we develop our self-awareness unless there is some external factor that does help us do that? So I think it's not an either or, it's a both. So it's more of that broader picture of looking at what it is in our lives that help create that self-awareness, that help integrate us into community or with others and move us in a positive direction.
Thank you, Vivian. I just want to add a few things. Socrates, for example, he said, to know the good is to do the good. And we know that that's not the case. We all know how we should act. We all know what we should eat. We all know how much exercise to do. And we end up not doing many times what we know is good for us. Aristotle, on the other hand, talks a lot about habit formation and the importance of really creating habits that, because we create our habits, but then our habits create us, because unconsciously we also build a lot of habits in our lives that are really not only not good enough, but they are damaging oftentimes. So I would say that self-awareness is the first step for change to happen and for transformation. So it is very important. I would not say the most important. I would say it's very important because it's the place where everything starts. Once you are able to notice, wow, I'm feeling depressed, but I have everything in my life. There is no real justification for my depression. And you start looking into all of those empty spaces or longings that you have not been able to fulfill, then that's the mining, the gold mining place where you can actually start digging out and understanding what do you need and where do you want to go. But then it is very important to really start making changes, as you both said, like really building new habits, understanding the destination, because it's not only good to say, well, I would really love to be successful. I know when I'm successful, I'm going to have a good life. And I always tell this joke, because we often go in life and we say, when I finish my studies, I will be very happy with my life. No, well, when I get a job and I have to stop paying my tuition, I'll be very happy. Well, no. When I get, when I'm a boss, I don't like this job so much. When I'm a boss, but then we get into the personal realm and we are like, no, when I have a partner, I will be very happy. No, when I get married. And then we say, when I get divorced, I'll be very, very happy. So, life takes us in this never-ending circle. And it's not only important to know what we want, but how to cultivate and to really work to create the ways in which we're going to make that vision happen. So for the good life, self-awareness is the starting place, and then change, habit formation, repetition of the new habits that we're cultivating, the new living standard that we want to create. And I would say also that it's our interaction with other people as well. So that I hope we answered your question, Carlos.
Well, thank you so much for all your answers. Our time for recorded questions is almost up, but I'm super curious to ask each one of you, the three of you, since we're talking about the good life. I'm wondering if each one of you could let us know very briefly, what is the good life for you? What are the main ingredients of your good life? Who would like to
Who
start?
wants to start? You pick, Nicole, who you want to speak in order.
Well, you're already there, so go, Vivian.
Okay, I'm happy to go. I've deeply thought about this. When I was diagnosed and had these events happen, of course, I looked at my bucket list And similar to what Arlene was saying, you know, when I get this, when I do this, it'll be happy. And when I do this, I'll be happy. And my bucket list, it's like, yeah, it'd be nice to travel the world, but really for me, it's my connections. So I know a couple of people on this webinar, and they are very near and dear to me. It's my family, my friends, it's the connections and love. Community and love. That's my meaning.
I love it. Paul?
Yeah, you know, this idea of freedom, it's something which I think is very important to me. And, you know, my concept of freedom, I think part of it has to do with that sort of headspace, those things that you can control. And as part of this whole idea of seeking new experiences, uh, discovering more about oneself, and doing it having the opportunity to do this in a community, particularly, let's say, family, close friends. This for me is really key. And you know, I'm always conscious of the fact that you know, when I think about friends, it's not just those who I know. You know, there are also many friends who I haven't had the opportunity to meet as yet. So, you know, how do I come into relationship with those other persons? How do I create, how do I benefit from and also create ripples which also impact others? So to me, that's, you know, that's my way of thinking of this idea of the good life. Yeah.
Awesome. Before I go with Arlene, I just want to share with you, Betty wrote in the chat that for her, it's definitely community built over time. It's family, friends, colleagues, and neighbors. Thank you, Betty. And Arlene?
Well, for me, I think that the good life includes honoring myself out in an authentic way, you know, to really appreciate who I am with my flaws, with my imperfection, with my longings, with my sometimes ingenuous, like ingenuity. Please help me, guys. Like ingenuity.
Creativity.
Yeah, because so I am a person that have this imagination. I believe in that the world can be better, and sometimes it feels naive, but I need to honor this authenticity in myself because that's my driver. That's what keeps me going. And a pillar for me in terms of the good life has to do also with service. I really believe that we are all interconnected, and that the more I can be of service to others, the more I'm doing for myself as well. So as a metaphor, what I like to say is that for me, seeing myself in other people's eyes and seeing others you know, as if they are me in a way, is what really connects me to a like profound meaning in life. You know, seeing each other in such light and allowing each other to be who we are and to bring about the best that we can be in every single moment.
Paul?
I just wanted to react to something that Arlen mentioned, and she talked about imagination, and she said maybe imagination might be a bit naive, but I think you're in great company because, you know, Einstein himself said, you know, imagination is more important than knowledge, and you know, knowledge, you know, I think imagination is in many ways is a sort of a leap of faith. Because the things that we know, we're very much grounded, we're connected, we know it's possible, or maybe we think it's not. But then imagination opens up that space for us to go beyond and to explore and ask, what if? And I think that is where, that's the source of innovation. That's the source of the new. And I think part of, the human struggle, the human development has always been, how do we go beyond the horizon? How do we go beyond, what's known? If we think about it, whether it's going to the moon, Christopher Columbus, so many others. I mean, just having that curiosity, that freedom to think about other spaces, and then not just think about it, but then take action and move forward. I think that's really so powerful. Yeah, thank you, Arlen, for sharing that.
Thank you. I want to share with you some of the answers in the chat. Carlos mentions that the good life is when one has meaning in life, coherence, importance, and purpose. And then Patricia mentions that the good life includes, as you have mentioned, the community support and the way in which you relate to others. So thank you so much for all your contributions. And believe it or not, our time is almost up. But before we move to the unrecorded Q&A session, I would like to ask all of you speakers if there's anything else that you would like to add or to reflect on, or a final message for our participants. Vivian.
Yeah, I think one of the important things is to stay connected. So if anybody would like to connect with us, we'll put a survey in the chat and you can give us some feedback, which always helps us, right, for that self-knowledge. And also will give us your information if you want us to connect with you. And thank you so much, Nicole, for doing this, for moderating today.
My pleasure. Paul, Arlen, is there anything that you would like to add on?
My dad, he used to say, everything is easy if you know how. I repeat, everything is easy if you know how. And, very often we are trying to find solutions to problems, to challenges, new circumstances, and it's new for us. So we simply don't know how, but there are other persons outside around us who have tackled these challenges and already know how to do it. And really, this whole thing of interdependence, very often we have the solutions to the problems and challenges and insights to the things that others are looking for. And if we can just be brave enough to share our mistakes, and others, if they can do the same with us, I think we will be moving so much closer to having that sort of fulfilled and quote unquote successful life.
And I would just like to end by saying that the power that each of us has to change ourselves and to change the world around us is much, much larger than we think. So that's my invitation. Like every time you feel, this is not for me, I cannot do it, I don't have the means, remember that we have a greater power within. And it is just, again, by thinking, what haven't I tried? Who can I ask? How can I try something different? Where haven't I looked? Think about all the possibilities that are out there in the world. They're all for us to use. So use them. And yeah, that's my final message for this piece.
So thank you very much, Arlen, Vivian, and Paul. And thank you everyone who's here with us this morning or who will be joining this recording later. We appreciate you being here. Please feel free to reach out to Arlen, Vivian, and Paul through the contact information provided in the chat. And please stay if you would like to join the speakers for the unrecorded session. If not, if you need to go, we are very glad that you were with us today, this morning, and we hope to see you the next time. So at this moment, we will stop the recording and transition to the